All right, so for those who care to pay attention, I'm David Zendzian. I'm one of the guys who helped get BSides started a couple years ago. I always like getting involved in things I probably shouldn't. I guess it's kind of what defines all of us and where we're at. Who here is on an operations side? Okay, so we have a security team. Okay, so it's mostly security. How about developers? How about business? So we're going to try to tie all these together, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. I originally started off with a nice long title here, trying to bring it all together, holistic security, but just narrowed it down to the basic idea of what happens when you have a security architect who builds an application. So we'll see what happened here and go from there. We're going to go through a couple things. I want to start off where a lot of talks on operational security start off with is kind of a history of how we got here, where we're at, and where we're going. And then kind of go into what inspired the application I built, what kind of application it is, and how I learned to do it, and how I learned to secure it, and make some fun stuff out of it at the same time. And I'll have a little bit of code. We'll go through it, and hopefully y'all can follow it. I should have grabbed my laser pointer so I could have shown you. For those who don't know me, I've been in IT and security for over 25 years. I went to college Charleston. I was supposedly a graduate around 92. I kind of stretched it out for a little bit and then stopped going after a while. But it was a lot of fun. I was doing a lot of fun things at that time. I started the first ISP here in town. If anyone here remembered AWOD, it was a WOD. Yes, it sucked. But I had fun starting it. I didn't choose a name. It wasn't my choice in a name. And I also started a wireless ISP many years ago, back when all my customers were going, why did you want to have wireless internet? You know, I had many lawyers' offices tell me at one time, why do we need internet and why do we need it wirelessly? And at that point I decided, it's time to go to California. So left Charleston, went to California, had lots of fun working at banking and healthcare, other financial services sites. Did my stint as a PA/QSA and a QSA, so I did audits and assessments for lots of fun things from the Marine Corps to Williams-Sonoma and Disney. So I've seen a lot of fun things, and all of that led me into the idea of where I'm at primarily, which is ZZ Servers, which is a managed services and security company my brother and I built to solve the problems I saw everywhere I did audits. So we tried to bring real security operations into a day-to-day operations for people and make it affordable for people. And the last thing here is kind of what we're going to talk about today is the random idea that my friend came up with that I decided I'd try to build. And we'll go through kind of the history of where that went and what it is and why a security person is writing applications, which not sure if it's good or not, but I had a lot of fun. So, operational security, any sort of security. Nothing really happens unless you have something worth taking. Why the old saying go, why they rob banks, because that's where the money is. If you have nothing that's worth anything of any importance, no one's going to really come look at your stuff. But if you have stuff that's important, they're going to come look at it. No way around that one. So who's looking at it? As George Tent might have said, and whether you like him or not, it's got something right there. How many researchers in this room? There's people here, that's what we do. We look at things, we're curious. We're not the only ones. We're trying to be on the good side of it, but anyone out there has the ability to research. That's kind of what we're here advocating for, is to have that research happen. So you have a target, people are looking at it. There's a big problem though. Attackers only need, how many times people heard this? Attackers only need one exploit to get into your environment. We all know that. What I'm going to go through here in the beginning is pretty much recursive over all the security talks we always hear, which I want to spend a few minutes on to kind of pay tribute to that part of the industry. The biggest problems we have is no one talks together. So there were really one or two people here who did business, but mainly security people. We aren't reaching out to the community in general. We have an entire computer science department here that all of them are like, oh, I don't work in security, so why would I go to Security BSides conference? There's a big disconnect. We're having a problem in technology. Now, I don't want to say information security because it is technology. It's a technology problem we have that no one talks to each other. They're all in their own little silos, and it's up to us to help bridge that. A lot of talks recently, you go to ShmooCon, you go to DerbyCon, a lot of talks that are happening, people are talking about the fact that we need to bridge the gaps. We need to understand the business and really know what the problems are to be able to bring real solutions to them and work with them in solving their problems. So out of all these controls that happen, basically operational security and regular security came out of this. And from here, we have the basic ideas. And again, there's lots of things people built the CIA triad and other things that go around. This is just the basic steps of what happens when people try to secure things. I'll go into a bit more detail, just kind of fill in the whole thing before we start going into what happened to actually go into making an application. We start off with the basics of critical information. As we started off originally saying, unless you have something that's important to steal, no one's going to steal it. So what is important to you? And we as security people don't typically know what's important to the business. We're there watching for attackers, we're there watching for signatures, we're there watching for things that are happening. But do you really know what's important to your business or whoever you're working for? They really need to drive that fact, but at the same time, they're not the ones who think out of the box. They're not the ones, to follow up on kids on that one, they're not the ones who will be paranoid enough to really think about the controls they need to put in place around it. This scoping, this classification of critical information needs to include everything. When you're looking at things, people typically say, oh, here's our financial system, this will be our SOX data. Oh, here's our online credit card system, that's our PCI data. Oh, here's our, whatever you want to name it. We're doing government contracts, so that involves this one thing. Here's our health records, here's our HIPAA. And they go off and make these little silos of the different areas and controls and policies that manage all of those things. I'll just stand up right now and say to all of y'all, I think that's a bad approach. One policy is much easier to live by than 12, especially if you start getting a bigger organization. So standardize and make it easier for people to live with. But also don't forget the dependent parts of it. So while the business might be concerned about their SOX compliance or their PCI compliance and they look at those systems, what supports them? You have the domain controllers, you have all the different things that go around it, the logging servers, you have all the other components, jump points, VPNs, any of those other components are part of the supporting environments that you need to, as a technology people, bring those back to the business because they're looking at their critical things, what makes the business function, make money. You're looking at what keeps them online and alive. So you have to blend the two of those and find that matching. So once you identify your critical information, you have to look at threats. And this is what we all have to do, right? We have to go out and figure out what the threats are. We go to conferences. We go listen to podcasts. We go to different training things. I only listed a couple of them here, but one of my favorite resources on the internet is just IRC. Who still uses IRC? Not that many of you. I mean, Twitter has replaced a lot of it. There's a lot of information on Twitter, but IRC is a great, great tool. There's a bunch of underground sites, there's a bunch of above ground sites that you can actually go and find really good up-to-date information. But outside the security realm, if you're working on programming or working on different tools, it's a great resource for talking to a live community of people around the world. So I'd suggest really going back to IRC because it still is a vibrant community. So once you've actually identified those, you need to analyze your vulnerabilities in your environment. We're all pretty comfortable with this. We've done these tools all the time. We're used to running vulnerability scans, doing the code reviews and penetration testing. I guess some of our favorite tools here, NT-Objectives is one of my favorite in the industry. I think they have a great spidering tool. If you haven't played with it, I think you should give it a chance. But that's one of, again, these are the favorite things that we as security people like. We like to go to conferences and learn. We like to go talk to our peers. We like to do pen testing. But now our favorite topic of all, who loves filling in the paperwork? Oh, come on. Someone's got, is there no government people here? So risk assessments. I did this for about 8 years as a PCI assessor, but also outside of that doing regular security risk assessments for companies. This is where you tile those things together. You have the vulnerabilities that you've identified. You have the risks that are out there. Putting it into a reusable document. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. I don't even want to, we could have a whole talk just on the different ways of documenting, analyzing your risk and putting it together. But it's one of the more important things you can really do is understand all these things, put it together to something that's usable by management all the way down to the tech teams. Make it something that's useful for those people out there. And then finally, what everyone thinks they're talking about these days when they talk about OPSEC is what do you do with all the data? How do you respond? Do you block them? We had a nice talk earlier about the honeypots. There are different things you can do around that. Do you attack or scan them back? There actually was an hour discussion at ShmooCon on the idea of do we legally have the rights of hacking people back? I don't want to get into debates of that. It's useless if you don't really know why you're doing it, what you're doing it, and the risks involved with it. It's just a reactionary. It's like someone hitting you in the knee and your knee jumping. It doesn't do any good for you. So these are great tools and great countermeasures. In fact, some of the things that we go into and what I wrote for the application I put together actually tie together some of these things into auto-responsive things, but nothing directly attacking somebody. It's more in a defensive role to keep things moving forward. So out of all these tools and things we've all put together, what are some of the problems we have? The biggest problem is that they are realm specific. People tend to segment their things out there and they go, oh, here's my PCI data, here's my HIPAA, here's my, my employee records for my HR stuff. And they do them in different areas and no one really talks to each other. We all admit that when it's one of our biggest problems, we don't talk very well together. Once we do have solutions, we're also very bad at communicating them back to people. We come up and say, you need to review, write this fix to your code, but we don't actually work with the developers to give them a report and say, go fix it, and we come back and scan them later. It's a back and forth. No one's really working together with that. And one of the things I went through in the program, I'm going to show you the work I did on, is I was doing both sides. I was small, I wrote all the code myself, so I was doing the design work, which my background in security helped me put together, but I also had to do the programming. So I had to make sure that integrated together, so it's tying together that communication that hopefully as you go back to your businesses, you can bring back some real good dialogue and make it work forward. And also kind of try to keep in mind that technology solutions, a lot of times people come and say, oh, this vendor has this box that'll solve this, or we can put an app firewall here and does this. Don't depend just on technology. You really need to understand the logic of what the programs are doing in your environment and bring that out-of-the-box thinking back to the different people and help them think out of the box themselves. So all this kind of builds up. We now feel we're all in the same space of operational security, talking about what the heck is a security guy doing making a program. I had just moved back from the Bay Area. I moved back to South Carolina, and a buddy of mine came up and said, hey, I've got a fun idea. Let's make a program. There's an online marketplace that makes money, and that gives people money and has like raffles and fun things out there. And honestly, getting all the details of it, I could talk for hours about the actual application because I wrote 20,000 lines of code for it. But it's just kind of a silly idea that I said, why not? Let's go ahead and figure it out and have some fun making it. So spent about 3 years of part-time coding and put it together. But this is actually what I mentioned back earlier. Do you have a target? What's your target? I have financial data. I'm actually a live action site that has a feeling of, I hate to say the word gambling, but it's a feeling of gambling. So anything you have like that, it's going to be like a banking. It's going to be like you're going to be a target. And it is actually a fairly active target considering it's really not known yet. I released it about 3 months ago, so it really isn't even out there publicly. So it's been kind of an interesting couple months here watching how people respond to it. Quick little view, it's just simple little site made up together. It's a place you can go shopping. When you buy things, you get cash back that you can use then raffle off anything else on there. Again, it's a silly application, something you really wouldn't expect a security architect to be working on, but sometimes you got to take silly projects to have fun and learn more. I started off like a lot of startups. I tried to find developers to do it for me. Again, I'm a security architect. I'm not a coder. I just code when I have to just for the fun of it. So I made the joyful mistakes of hiring people onshore and offshore and going through the trials and tribulations of realizing that they don't really know what I'm trying to get done. Communication is the biggest issue. Even with English speaking, communication is a big issue. Trying to offshore to Estonia, that worked even worse. Cost us money, we didn't get anything out of it. So that was a big issue around there. I'm sure y'all have dealt with it before. I can see a couple of heads nodding when you're talking about the offshoring. It's nothing fun. So what was the biggest problem I ran into was the fact that developers see a life cycle of this. They see, oh, give me some requirements. I'm going to design, that'll make the design. I'm going to write some code. We're going to test it. And that's the biggest misnomer, especially when you start dealing with PCI, we start asking questions about doing code reviews, is the testing people do is functionality testing. It's not security testing. So I was really getting upset and frustrated that they were making code that I was able to exploit, and it was just demo code. So it was very, very upsetting to me when what I really wanted to have was a secure process for developing code, having the risk assessment in the beginning of it. So this is something that I would like to see in more software houses actually, or anywhere you're developing software, is when you're making the functional spec and the business of the application, you need to have, I'm sure you all advocate this all the time, security people involved in that step so that you can provide that pragmatic voice in saying, here's the risks we have with this. Make sure we can keep that as part of the design so in the backside, when you're coming off of the application, you can actually test against those risks you identified in the beginning. And also have it as part of the iterative loop, as more things being developed, you can tie it into it and identify a risk, and then part of the test make it happen. So since I couldn't outsource it and make it happen, I did what every other hacker would do. I decided to learn Rails myself and make it happen. So Rails was a fun challenge. It was a really interesting thing. I heard a couple people earlier, I think it was a training last night, talking about Ruby and Rails and the joy of learning it. If you haven't learned it, I would suggest you do. There are some really cool things you can do with it. As I mentioned here, from an operational security side, you have Metasploit. It's all written in Ruby and has wonderful tools. And once you've learned how to write in the Ruby, you can actually do your own Meterper code part snippets to actually make it a useful tool to you and what you're actually working on. On the operations side, Puppet and Chef, they're all written in Ruby and they tie into Rails. for various things they do. It's a very helpful language to actually do manage configuration management for your environment. On development side, Redmine. Does anyone ever hear of Redmine before? One person. How about GitHub? So picture GitHub, but for a private environment that ties your CVS, your Git, your trouble tracking, your wiki, all that into one sort of tool for an internal environment. It's an open source Rails environment to do all your DevOps inside of it. So some really great tools and really good reason. I wanted to do more with Metasploit, so I had to learn more about Rails. So I figured, why not? Let's write an application so I can figure out Rails. That's the best way of figuring it out, and that's how I started in code before. Just get the code and figure it out. So I'm going to go through a couple things here on how I learned Rails and what I learned from it, and basically how I got into the security side of it. So any of you who want to get into this, you can actually follow some of these things yourself and give it a chance to learn some Ruby and Rails yourself. One of the best places I went to is Try Ruby. Wonderful place. What they actually have is an interactive web application where you can actually go to it, and it'll give you code snippets you can type into the web page, and it'll let you write Ruby code, and it'll debug it and work with you and actually help you in an interactive web environment write the code. Great environment for writing the tools, and I expect to see a lot more online training things using this approach. It was a lot of fun, but not as much fun as learning Rails, because who doesn't want to do a program for zombies, right? So I originally went through this when it was on version 3 of Rails. Now it's on version 4. I'm sure it's changed a little bit. I've not gone through the classes before. But in the version 3, what you actually did is you wrote a Twitter application for zombies. Pretty useful, right? So it actually was a fully interactive environment. So they go through a training video, then you have that same, like the Try Ruby site had, where you actually would type the Rails code into it, go through the examples, and actually make a functioning Twitter application in the web page through all the different courses. In about 2 hours, you're writing Rails code and writing a full-on Rails application with database integration and basic tools. Now, it doesn't get you everything you need to know, but it's a great starting point and has lots of fun things in it. And if you're like me, you're a kind of a hacker coder. So the best way I learned after this to get really into the mix of what can be done is a wonderful site called RailsCast. And I wish they had these for every development language out there. This guy was a prolific webcast developer. He made hundreds, I think like 300 or 400 different webcasts. Most of them are like 6 to 10 minutes long. They're very short, but they're very detailed on how to do specific things. So say you wanted to focus on migrating from Rails 3 to Rails 4. He has one webcast on what variables and functions and how you have to actually do it. And you can just follow him step by step or even just copy and paste code from his website. Wonderful environment. In fact, you can see on the model caching, I just deployed this last week when we started getting some more activity. I decided to put memcached behind it and start doing some caching in the back end. I watched this little 6-minute video, go, oh, that's all I have to do in there. So and I spent 2 hours adding cache code to all my different models. So for those who don't understand Rails, I want to give you a little walkthrough on the various parts of how Rails works. So on the very base level, you have a model, which is actually a database definition. Inside the model, you're going to say things like, the different records it has. So it might have an ID, a name, a password, various fields of describing the structure of the database. But you also can add some really cool things, like you can point to this record relates to another record. So you can actually have like a user and a store. So the store is owned by the user, so that relational model is just done in English inside the model definition. So it can tie together things. So if you have a store that's a user one, I can actually say, don't delete the store record if it has a user model attached to it. So it actually does all the error checking around it. And I'm going to get a little bit further down about some of the more security things it can do. It has some really great built-in stuff on the model side for doing validation. So if you're entering data in, you can say, this field's only supposed to be numbers. This field has to match this regular expression. This field only has to be present or not present. So you have some really great definitions, or even writing custom code to actually do validation of parts of the data inputting before it actually even gets to the database. So it's a very strong validation model built into it. The next step up from the model is the controller, and that's where all the logic happens in the application. That's where you're going to say, something came in from the user, I need to do some sort of logic function, have some tie into the model, and produce something back to the application, which is what's called the view layer. On the view layer, that's the web page. That's the actual HTML markup page that gets you rendered the output. And so inside Rails, there's different ways of doing it. I tend to do just regular ERB templates, which is like HTML and then the code snippets put into it, like a PHP code would be also. There's actually other languages. I think it's SASS is one, where you can actually do like a syntax-based language. You can do an H1, and it's like a syntax like Python in a way, which is one of the reasons why I hate Python. I hate syntax, so if I put a wrong space, it screws me up. But anyway, just from that basic structure, I want to go into a couple of the other controls we had to make the application. So naturally, being a security person, I had to walk through and say, what can I do with security on Rails? I can't just say deploy an application, because every website you follow for a webcast says deploy the application. And basically, you can make a Twitter application in Rails in about 12 minutes. It doesn't take very long at all. You can do about 15 commands, run it, and boom, you have a running Twitter emulation of an application. Nothing fancy, but it works. But it doesn't have all the various things that are needed. So Rails provides a bunch of really good information, fully integrated cross-site request forgery built into it. So it makes all your data variables automatically post on each page. So when you're posting data, if it doesn't match on the back end, you can know it's a forgery request. Has a bunch of other details showing the ways you can help address privilege escalation, SQL injection, and unsafe queries, and how to tie together your validations and some basic minimalist structures of what you need to do for security. It didn't really get into everything I wanted, so I had my own list of things I keep that aren't in the basic documents, things you kind of would expect, which are our business logic, some how do we actually prevent mass data. When you say mass assignment, what that means is you're submitting a form to a web page form, and it's got a first name, a last name, an address, a phone number, a comment. That's multiple fields being mass inserted into the database into mass record update. And I'll show you some of the controls that Rails has for those features nowadays, which I wish that other languages had it. I'm not the best in some languages, but I know PHP doesn't have it, ASPX doesn't have it. And if it does, I'd like to learn how to do it just because it's good to know. So we'll get into a couple of these in a little bit more detail so we can get an understanding of how I put these controls together around it. And actually, I think the slides are all going to be out there. If you don't take any pictures, they're going to be posted along with the videos to go with this. So on the business side, again, this is one of those things where you rarely have the communication between the developer, the business, and security working together. So what I did, since I'm the developer and the business side of the application, I integrate the security into my life cycle. So I would actually, some of the tools you're going to see here, I actually would iteratively do code reviews, do application reviews, do security controls, release it, do my own QA. That's why it took me 3 years, because I do have a full-time job, and it's a lot of work to follow the processes. So inside of your business, the biggest thing you can do is making sure that you have security as part of that life cycle. I'm sure everyone here would fully agree with that. There's nothing new and fancy on that one. Awareness and training. Again, I know everybody here does awareness and training, but are you really training your developers to not just have, and this is one of my biggest arguments even here at the College of Charleston is, we're training developers, and then we're saying, oh, well, now you've had your Python class, let's go take a class on Python security. You're not actually having security as part of what you're doing. So this is actually a plea to everyone here. If you are making a security training program, if you're actually helping build the programs in your organizations to do security training, try to have it in such a way where it actually brings people together to have that discussion and dialogue. Have it so the developers have a set of standards that they actually have to program with that have the security built into the methodologies they're going to use as developers. Have your marketing and QA folks, have them have a process for them to include security as their discussion. If you have a salesperson out there making a sale, and they're not bringing up the idea of the risks involved with using different parts of your tools with the customers. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities for cross-sells, upsells to have the discussion with the customers, because everyone is worried about security these days. It's good to have. But I think the biggest thing that can really help is a security bug bounty program. I always was a big fan of it, and once Google and everyone else started coming out with them, I thought it was something I wanted to have. So when I made BitADollar, I actually have a section in there that's a full security bug bounty, and it really paid off humongously for me. When I first released the site, within 3 or 4 days, no one even knows about it. Until in fact, there's more people in the room who've heard about BitADollar today than actually probably know about it. It's such a new application. And I don't have millions to market it. We're not, funded. So what happened is, when I first released it and it first got indexed by Google, I've got some really new friends from India. There's actually a team of teenagers, not teenagers, there's about 15 of them from 15 to 25, and all they do every day is go visit bug bounty programs, find exploits, and make money, and they're making a lot of money. We're talking like 15-year-olds making $100,000 a year in India, finding bugs in Google and Yahoo. They're good hackers, and they're actually helping inspire a couple of the ideas that I'm going to show you the code that I wrote for. They weren't actually able to find exploits, but they found ways of harassing the site and I was able to help mitigate those to make sure I can handle the load of an attacker hitting it. So don't underestimate the idea of a bug bounty. And as such, bug bounties have really grown. There's actually, right here, 2 different commercial bug bounty programs. You can actually go here, if you can get buy-in from your company, and actually be part of the program where actually security investigators and researchers are actually going to, the crowd security, I thought it was security, and the hacker one, terrible names. But then, BitDollar's not a good name either. But with these sites, people are posting their applications or websites, whatever it might be, onto these sites, and hackers or security researchers. In fact, if someone here wants to go get some valid security research, if you're trying to find projects and don't want to get in trouble for scamming people's websites, go to these sites. Hundreds of companies list their sites and says, please hack us. If you find hacks, you can either get props for it, which I have no money. So the guys who found stuff on my site, they're just on a page that says thank you for helping us. But there's actually real cash. In fact, if you look right here, this one right here was for the HackerOne. They've had 1.5 million in bounties awarded, and they've only been online for like a year, maybe a year and a half, if that. So they've awarded over $1 million in bounties in that short amount of time. So it's a great thing. Please take advantage of it, and it'll help you learn more. It'll help the industry get better overall. So now to jump in some of the, I think my presentation died. Sorry about that. Nah. And here we are. That's what I get for working on a presentation all morning. I was leaving it up on my desktop all day. Now I just want to get a little bit of time and go in through some of the actual coding examples. And one of the things I always felt was frustrating about going to security conferences is a lack of actual real examples. It's always been annoying to me that you go somewhere and people talk about, oh, you need to have a security policy, you need to have code review, but they don't really get into the details. So if you can't read it, I apologize. The slides will be available afterwards, and I'll be available to have any discussions. But these are actual things that are either part of Rails or things that I have actually integrated from third-party tools or my own tools to make the application respond to its environment and have some controls around it. I mentioned mass assignments earlier. If you have a form that's being submitted that has multiple fields, one of the biggest problems that happen out there is people don't, one, validation of it, but two, is the user authorized to input the data in the fields they want to have? As you can see on this example here, what I've got is I've got 3 different functions right here. This is actually updating an item. So say something gets sold on BitDollar, or somebody creates a new item. Say the administrator of a store creates a new item to list, or an administrator like me modifies a record. There's different types of people who might do functions. So if I bought something, I actually can leave a comment back to the seller on the site. I can actually rate the seller and do different things around it. And so you want to be able to have interaction from the different people, but what you don't want to have is someone who bought an item able to change the price or able to change the pictures on it or able to change other details of the records that they shouldn't have access to. So I'm going to show you in the next slide a bit more details of how this works, but you can see inside, and I wish I had my pointer there, but over on the right side you can see after update attributes, it actually is a function call. It looks like a variable, but a function call with one is if it's updating if it's sold, one if it's the admin, or one if it's just an update from the owner of the store. And the way this works, and that just totally came out bad. Sorry, y'all. So I'll just make this, it won't be perfect, but it'll work for right now. Come on. Okay, so it's hard to see, and again, I apologize for this. I just decided I wanted to reformat when it crashed a second ago. But what this is within the Rails code, Rails is object-oriented. I did some private functions. And inside the private functions, each one of the prior calls here for update sold item, update, admin update or update item, there's a function that goes with it. And inside each of those functions, I'm able to define which elements within the database table that function's able to update. So I can say administrators, if you look at the top one, the administrator one, that has access to all the records in the database. So it can actually, on the item record, it can update pictures, it can update prices, it can update anything. The update item actually is a smaller subset because in our environment, once you've created a listing, you can't change the price because if it's involved in a bidding environment, our prices are all fixed. So you don't want to have somebody changing prices and affecting people's ratio to what they've actually got access to. So even if you own the store and you own the item, you can't change the price. As you can see on the update item parameter here, there's no pricing here. They can change the quantity, they can change the description, they can change it for renew it, and they can change pictures. But that's all that they can change. And then if it's one of the buyers, the buyer can basically only update the attributes that deal with the update of the delivery item. So because of these controls, and it's called strong parameters in Rails, and I really wish, if there's any developers in other languages, let me know if other languages have this feature. It's one of the few things that I really came to love Rails about, is the idea that I can really granularly assign individual user and individual function rights to what they can access and can't access for changing database records. Wonderful set of tools, and it's all built in the system. On top of that, you can actually extend it. So like in Perl, you have the different Perl modules. Rails has gems, which provide various things, so you don't have to rewrite things yourself. Now, you're welcome to go off and write your own authentication library, but Device has some really great integration. It has full, password changes, reset URLs, all this stuff already built for you. You basically stick one line in one file, run a command, and then you have full authentication tied into your system. It makes it pretty much seamless. One of my favorite extensions to that is called the Device Security Extension, and that allows us to have all the controls that we want to have over accounts: password expiration, password length, and I forgot to grab it in here, but I believe the maximum password the device can handle is 127 characters, which I set $1 to that. So if you decide you want to do a 100-character password in $1, you're welcome to do it, and actually will work fully well for you. And then session timeouts and locking. It's important to have timeouts. And outside of banking, does anyone really know any websites that really have timeouts on them and log them out? I can't think of many that do. Yeah, outside of banking. Yeah, but not really that many. And realistically, in PCI, you're supposed to have session timeouts. So they're supposed to have it. In a lot of places, they don't. Another fun thing is CanCan. I am not actually actively using CanCan, but what CanCan does is it does role-based access. So you can actually define users and roles have access to various functions. We're very simple. We have an administrator or not administrator, so we don't have many roles. I didn't have to use it, but it's a great tool for doing multiple layered roles models. And again, we're taking security and applying it to the application and trying to make it have the controls that we as security professionals would like to have in applications, and these are some of the tools you can build from them. OmniAuth is a wonderful set of libraries. You can actually, you can go to $1, you can use Twitter, you can use Facebook, using Google. You can log in with those, you can control your access controls through those. So you can actually use Google's two-factor authentication as if you want to make sure you have a strong, secure login to go, buy a car from me, you're welcome to. And Capsca, while we know Capsca is easy to bypass, it's a great tool to have. If someone's going to have to change a password or do things that are in a semi-unauthenticated environment, it's a great tool to help limit the number of bots hitting you. Just doing password sending, reset passwords out there to help limit that. And then another really cool tool is Alpaca. And I'll show you in a little bit that I didn't actually use it, but what Alpaca does is you can create a file that contains whitelist and blacklist, and at various parts within the application say, this one web page can only be accessed from these IP addresses. So it's an easy way of saying your administrators can only log in from one IP to this part of the function and control those pieces. I use the other layers to actually do role-based access in the environment, and I'm doing another method I'll get into in a few minutes on actually doing blacklists, and I don't do any whitelists, but you'll see the cool way I tie into security and the blacklist in just a few minutes here. Code review. Anyone here do code review? How many languages do you know? I'm actually fairly proficient in Rails these days, but I still use the tools available. So I'm going to go through this one and code-sake Dawn in just a second. Brakeman is a wonderful tool. It takes about 30 seconds to go through my code, maybe about a minute at most. And again, I have about 16,000 lines of code, and it goes through and is able to pull. This is actually a report I ran in my development tree this morning, and I didn't include all the security warnings, but some of the security warnings are some of the joins I do. Some things are so complex in the way I do joins, it thinks that there's possibly a SQL injection on there, but there's no variables going into it, so it's not an injection. But it's a great tool to quickly go through the code and produce a report of what could be an issue. There's two versions of this. There's Brakeman and CodeSake Dawn. Both of them provide similar sort of things. They're based upon the same sort of ideas as they go through the structure of the models, the validations, the overloading you do, the different ways you write the code, and it tries to tie together, a good code review. You can buy commercial tools, but these work really well for the basics of what you're going to go after. If you're really worried about security, one of the biggest problems I've seen with most applications built on Ruby or Python or Perl or PHP is you end up having third-party libraries. You're going to have, on here, I've already listed half a dozen gems from device to the security extensions. And each one of these gems comes from a Git code repository, which an exploit hits. They make a post on their site, they release new code, but have you gone out and actually updated all the libraries your application depends upon? Have you QA'd all that? And I don't know, I'm sure you all have seen it before. I can't count the number of times I was on an assessment that they have not upgraded their web application because they think it's going to break one function, so they don't touch it for years. It's one of the biggest problems we have trying to talk to developers is the idea that they have to do that work, they have to take that step forward and do the code reviews and do the fixes on their code and move forward. And Gem Canary is a great tool, and I'd love to see more of these for other languages too. The one thing they don't have yet is it only works if your code's in Git code. What it actually does is scans your code, looks at your gem the gems you've added, looks at the code you've actually written, and it goes out and has listings on all the gem sites on Gitco and all the various other places that make gems, and looks at their security release lists. So if you have your application that they've looked at in their environment, and the new exploit comes out for a device, you'll get an email saying, hey, this application has this device module, has exploit X, Y, and Z came out, upgrade it now. So it actually does all the watching of your gems for you, which is one of the biggest problems I ever had in development. Not that I was a big developer, but on anything I dealt, even just rolling things out. When we used to do Apache by source code, anything you used to do on a code-based release where you're tying into things that you have to manual update has been a big problem. So Gem Canary I think is going to be a great idea. I personally am concerned about giving my code entirely over to another company. That's just me being paranoid, but I might do it one day. We'll see how it goes. I think it's definitely a great idea. And I love the idea that you're going to get email alerts when you have to do upgrades. It makes it easier and less things you have to watch. On the entire environment inside BitADollar, I think I have about 35 gems. And if I had to go out there every week or every day scanning 35 websites looking for new releases, I just wouldn't have any time to do anything else. And I have kids and I like to have fun too. So now we step back and go back to the regular traditional operational security side. So inside regular operational security, we have people who've deployed web servers. They have applications they've deployed, and they would come to someone like maybe I'm not just a security person, but I also do a lot of operations work. They come to someone like me and say, okay, we're deploying Nginx, we're deploying Apache. Let's secure it. Let's make it good. Let's not forget to change our TLS and SSL headers so we can't get hit by Poodle. Here's a couple of things I went into on top of that were there before Poodle to kind of go into some of the things that most websites should have, but realistically don't have. This one right here goes into simple things like SSL stripping, making sure that it enforces the SSL. The X-frames. One of the biggest problems on attacking people is if you have the click jacking, you have an X-frame, a hidden frame come up above somebody where they click on something, but it's a hidden frame above it, and you click jacking and take over it. So between the hidden frame and some of the other features that go into the next page here in a second, you can actually tell the browser's control to now say, oh, I can't display that page because it's not supposed to be a frame over on this. So it has some of the controls for doing frame over. I gave a couple links in here on where some of the details come from. And if you want to talk more in detail on how it works or what it does, I'd be happy to get into that. I just don't want to get too in depth into some of the specifics right this second. And this is actually another one for cross-site scripting. It's another header you can put in there. And these are all headers that come out before the HTML. So when you're talking to the web server itself, it produces the headers and the information that defines what the connection can have. And this is another for cross-site scripting. It ties into some of the browser controls that are out there. But what I found is one of the best controls you can do, which I have really not found many sites that can really do a good job with it, is content security policy. Anyone here deploy content security policy before? Okay, so I've got a fun gift for you guys to do. I got one hand back there. So one person here has felt the pain of content security policy. What the basic idea behind a content security policy, again, this is the messed up formatting because there's a lot of data in there. I'll get this back to you. But it defines the basic things of what sites can you load the web page from? What sites can you load JavaScript from? What sites can you load CSS from? What sites can you load, let's see what else we have. Connection source, we have, so it defines when the browser connects to a website, you have various elements that are being loaded. Like if you hit $1, you're going to have the links for Google, the links for Facebook, the links for Twitter. You're going to have the site itself, my JavaScript, my CSS. But if you look at the way that we have our content security policy, you can't load CSS information or frame information or JavaScript from a third-party site because I haven't listed it here. So the controls that are in modern browsers, IE and Chrome and Firefox, they all look at the content security policy. So if you load the web page, and this is very cumbersome to debug, it's not the easiest thing in the world, is you can pull up a web page and all of a sudden it just won't display. And you'll get a little error in the console of the browser developer console that says unauthorized by content security policy. So I had to actually go through, and this does not do it justice, but it's a humongous amount of code just loading up the Google icons. They have icons in JavaScript and CSS they pull from 3 different locations. So you basically have to list everywhere a browser has to connect to for every function it might do to go to your website. And that's why most people don't really do it. It's a humongous amount of effort. Most people don't even understand all the different things that are loading in their web pages or web applications they've written. So it tends to cause a big heartache and break things left and right. So because it breaks things, people don't do it. I've done it just because I built it from the ground up, and every time when I added Facebook, I added all the pieces to Facebook. There's a few pieces. Google does have a bit of JavaScript they put in line, so I have to change one thing that allows inline JavaScript. But other than that, you can't insert code into our application. It just doesn't allow it. The browser will say it's not allowed by policy. I'm sure this is something that people have done before. Again, we're dealing with just the traditional operational security rules here of what we'd all expect to be seeing out there, and this is throttling. So I've basically set up a zone of 10 meg and looking for a certain rate limit on that. So if we get somebody who's really slamming the site, the Nginx will actually throttle the connections. It'll prevent the site from being taken down from either a denial service or possibly even distributed denial service if it can all hit it the right same way. It can actually throttle the connections and make it so the server is still responsive. So those are the traditional things that go into the basic configurations. I want to throw this slide up here just to really go into some of the additional controls that people put out there, application firewalls. And specifically, I wanted to talk to you about the NASX. I'm not even sure how you say these names. I don't know who comes up with them. But NAXI, that sounds good. NAXI is a very cool idea in an application firewall. What it does is instead of being a signature-based rule, like mod security would be, or in mod security, you define your signatures looking for certain types of activities happening. What NAXI does is it defines certain types of activities that are known to be invalid web-based activities. An example it has right here, you shouldn't have certain characters or functions happen within the stream of data going to a website. I've already done things inside BSidesCHS to prevent certain types of characters for inserting the HTML and those sort of things. But one thing that NAXI does is it actually looks, and if someone's submitting embedded HTML inside a form coming in, unless you're actually supposed to do that, it'll actually block that. So it doesn't look for signatures, it's looking for invalid types of attacks, which is a very nice new idea. And in the stats that they have on their website, they actually compare it going against the open vulnerable websites that you can do your tests on. And it actually blocks and finds like 90 or 95% of the attacks from a rule set that's like 20 lines long. So it's very robust. But like any sort of application firewall, unlike things that are signature-based where you have known signatures and you can kind of generally be okay, because this ties directly into the type of content going through the web server, you have to actually get down in detail and do tuning with that one. So it's going to take direct involvement from the developers and the people who are actually running the site to make sure it runs fine. And it will make it, like content security policy, a lot more work to actually tie into it. But it's a great tool to have and something you should have. And then to round out on the actual server side of operational security, I listed my favorite open source and pseudo open source. Splunk is not really open source, but they do have a free version for 500 meg a day. But these are sort of tools that I've also built into what I've done in my commercial endeavors, as also what I've done inside of BitAdollar. Fail to ban is a wonderful set of scripts. It's very extensible, and I'll show you in a few minutes some of the tools I've done with it to actually make it a really useful tool for watching activities on the system. OSSec, great for looking at logs, doing file integrity monitoring. Again, I tie all that back into one tool that does my blocking and alerting, just to make it easier. And who can't live without syslog and the tools that go with it? So I listed a few tools here that you can use to output this data to visualize it. The picture here is with Splunk tied into the OS Tech Monitor. And I keep one of these dashboards open on my desk all day long. It's a great tool to see spikes and trends. We visually see things better than computers can process them. I think Kiss was mentioning earlier, you can't really have a lot of programmable things. You can look for trends in data because our minds and our eyes can pick up trends in data much better than a program can. It's much harder for it to see the things we see visually. I wanted to also give you, the Loggly, Logstash, and Graylog. If you can't afford Splunk, they're great tools for getting that visualization that are also open source. And then to finish up our traditional operations security, we have our networking side. So I'm sure everyone here has used or played with Snort. Anyone play with Cicada yet? Yeah, I still use Snort. I mean, it's a good tool. So again, it's signature based. I didn't throw it in here because I'm not doing embedded dollar, but has anyone here played with Moloch yet? Well, next time we'll do a talk on Moloch for you. Moloch is a wonderful open source tool. Anyone here use NFR or a tool to do full network capture of your environment? It's a full network capture device that will capture all of your network data. I've got one of my data centers in DC, about I store 6 days worth of network data, and it's about 2 terabytes of data I keep in the system. And what it allows me to do is I can actually go back and say 3 days ago, give me the network traffic going from this IP address, and I'll go from every connection it has. It's a full network capture, so I have the entire data stream I can go through. It's basically Splunk for pre-cap data. And you can do distributed nodes and sensors, ties it all into a nice Elasticsearch database. I don't have a slide on it, but go look at Moloch if you have any questions about it. My best friend is one of the authors of it, and I use it extensively. It's a really great tool. Ties it all together. And I know I ran over, so I'm going to go kind of quick over some of these last few things here because I want to end on time for the next person. Yeah, so I have a bunch of slides. So I did some additional coding because I want the application to do more than that. I wanted to share this code with the links. I found various things out there on the web to help make things better. And again, this is just code in Ruby and partially Rails, but the idea is you can take this and extend your own application to do this sort of thing. Inside of Rails, you can't really see it again. It formatted my little thing a little funky here. But inside the model definition, I mentioned earlier you have the models of Rails, where you define the different parts of what's inside the database table that the model associates with. You can actually have validations. So you can see kind of parts of it here. You can have field where it says, is the ID a number? If they enter a character for it, it's going to kick it out and say it isn't a valid field. If it's a name, you can see on the name I said the length can only be 4 to 35 characters, and it gives an error message for that. It gives you regular expression of what characters I allow. So it allows a simple one place to define for every field in a table what type of data it is, what's allowed for it. So what I did is I extended that part itself, and I put inside a special function. What this does right here is this actually takes the validation within the Rails model, so it does validation code. And if it gets a validation error, typically what the application will do is it display it on the screen a little box that says you entered invalid code, or please try again, or whatever it would be. What this part does here is it actually takes and outputs to the Rails logger a message saying this event happened for a validation error, because typically Rails will not log validation errors to the log file. And from my point of view on an operational security side, I can't act on that log unless I know something's happening. So it does me no good for it. So I had to extend it to get this out of there. And you'll see 2 messages here on the bottom. One actually has an IP address and one doesn't, because I had to keep in mind some people might not be actually logged in, or they might be coming from a local source like myself for doing testing. So I had to make it support connections that are not remote. So it actually creates a message like this, where it actually has inside the log file the IP address of where it happened, and it'll say the full message what came on the screen. You can see, the store. It's a new insert function. They didn't check the purchase button. The state doesn't match the zip code. So it has all the validations I have built out there. I have now hitting the log file of things that are happening. So if someone's doing something to the application, so say, yes, you're looking for invalid logins, but are you actually looking for invalid data being entered into your application and acting upon it? And that's what I've done here is I've made the application log what's happening inside of it. So if someone enters wrong data, or they don't do things they're supposed to do, it logs it to the database. And making that work is just a matter of going to each one of my models, and you can see in the top part there, I put include validation logger. Each model, I've put that in there instantly. Any validation it does now logs to the file. And also just, if you're going to do some Rails code, by default, Rails will only in production mode log high and critical events, so I had to change the method and model so it actually would log that data out there. I just want to share that with you if you decide to go look at that yourself. One other function is there's another gem out there called public activity. It's used a lot for people who are doing like Facebook type social media apps. So you can say this person did this or this person did that. What I've used it for is every function within the site. You can see this is actually one of my controllers here. So there's various activities I create. So whenever we're doing anything, if you're updating a record, you're visiting a site, you're browsing an entry, you're making a purchase, you're adding something to the shopping cart, I have all these entries that come out, and now I have a website. I'll place my admin side of the website. I can actually go and browse anonymous and logged in users and see what they're doing. So if an administrator changes a password, I would see it in here. I'd see that password. So any function from a public side to a regular customer side to a user side, I'm logging all the activity. I can do some nice visualizations with it, get nice reports. If we ever do have investors, they can look at nice pretty graphs and then make it all work. So that's something that really is a useful thing, is making sure if you're going to log for anything out there, make sure you're logging what people are doing with the application. Makes it really useful. So now that I've got all these pieces built, I've got your traditional network security from your snort, I've got the application security, I've got some development stuff happening, I got some business logic. How do I all tie this all together? So, and I'm going to try to wind this up real quick here because I know we're almost running out of time. I mentioned earlier I use fail to ban, and I don't want to really go into the details of these. I include the details in here of what I put in here just so I can share it with the community so you can kind of learn from what I built from this. Most of the stuff is kind of taken from examples out there, and I kind of built it to be tied together. But I've created some fail to ban filters for the authentication stuff, for model, which is the validation, when we saw the validation errors. And then I created another one for the throttling. So if I see throttling messages, which I'm getting a large amount of activity, if I see validation where they're entering wrong code, or if I see authentication errors, each one of those I have defined different sets of how I'm going to respond. So if someone's just entering a wrong username, I don't want to block them out. But if they enter a wrong username 10 times in 5 minutes, that's a bit much. I want to act on that, and I can tune these as it need be. For validation, I make it again. It needs to be 10 times of invalid data entry. 1 or 2 times is okay, 3 times is okay. We get to 10 times, I get a bit nervous. I'm like, why are you doing that? So I've created inside here the filters that search the regex of the log entries for both the authentication, the throttling, and the validation one. And again, I apologize for not looking pretty, but I just want to have some code samples in there so you actually take this back to your office, wherever you're going to look and play with it yourself, and get an idea of what kind of code it takes to make that happen. From that, there's actually an action that happens, and what it does is it adds or removes the IP address in question to a banned file. So earlier I mentioned there's a gem that was available to do in whitelisting. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have my application respond based upon activities that happened. So this actually would create lists out there, and then inside my application controller, there's a thing called a pre-filter. So anything that happens before things happen, you can do pre-filter, post-filter, pre-change. It has all these wonderful controls for controlling when activities can happen. So in a pre-filter, before it does anything in the application, it's going to read the banned file and see if the current user's IP address is in that list. And if it does, it's going to send them to the error page 599. It's just one error page I've made up there. So anytime the IP address that the person has is in the site, they get this and says, sorry, but your IP address has been blocked. So the application just responds based upon the activities that are going on around it. And then it'll block them based upon the time frame of what I defined for authentication or throttling or filtering. And again, those are just a few examples of the ones I built into it. And you can kind of go crazy. As you have more access to the developers and the function you're doing, you can really build from that to things that you as a paranoid security person are looking for to have it respond and act for you so you can make it better for everyone out there. And even with my break in the beginning, we ended good on time. So there's my contact stuff. If you just Google DMZ, you can kind of find me sometimes too. But I don't know how much time we have. I kind of ran through that real quick.